why buying 2.5 acres cash was my biggest secret to debt-free off-grid living. Hi, I'm John. I've been living off-grid going on 7 years. Just might be that I know a thing or two about frugal off-grid living. In 2020, when I bought my land, most people thought I was crazy. At this point, I'll bet that some of those people have changed their opinion about buying what people deem less than desirable land and starting a homestead. And here's what happened is I was going to save money. I had a good career. I was going to save a lot of money and then start a homestead. And I figured if I could put away at least 100 grand, maybe 400 grand, then when I started my homestead, I would be, set. I would be able to definitely make it happen. But I was laid off unexpectedly, like a lot of people in 2020. And I had $6,000, and I decided to just roll the dice and give it a shot. So with nothing more than a camper van that I did put a little bit of money into to make it, a decent little house, I got a $400 trailer and moved off grid. I had 2 tanks for water and about a year's supply of canned food and rice and beans and the 6 grand. And I spent that 6 grand probably the first month building my shop. Something positive I could say about my stepdad is that he taught me a little bit about survival. And that's why I pretty well always structured my lifestyle off-grid with food, water, shelter, or as I like to say it, shelter, water, food, in the order that you should really make sure to obtain them. But ideally, you just need all 3. And having a camper van with shelter, bringing some tanks of water, your supply of food, right there, I had the shelter. That was enough food and water to get by for an entire year. So I was able to roll the dice, and then I just thought of some things that I was passionate about and started a business and started to create a little bit of income and document my process. And I wanted to find out, if I removed myself from civilization, if the economy took an entire dump, how close could I get to just restructuring everything by myself? Can I create a security of food, water, and shelter? And so everything I did was with that in mind. And there's just some things you got to do, like you pretty well have to have a driver's license and things like that. But there's a lot of other things that you can really disconnect yourself from. And so, why did I build my soil from scratch? Because I wanted to know that I could. Anyhow, I knew realistically the 6 grand I had wasn't a lot of money, and it wouldn't make much sense to try to buy a $60,000 piece of land. And I just started to look. Was there some land affordable that I could start a homestead somewhere? And I searched the entire United States. And people ask me all the time, how can I find land? And I always recommend the same thing. Use Google and other search engines. And the reason why is you can use keywords. Say you want owner-financed land, search that. And then you're not just searching one website, you're searching thousands and thousands of websites. And you can just use a couple keywords and narrow it down. And by searching the entire United States, you're broadening your horizons exponentially. And you could find some perfect land that you never thought possible, because somebody just wants to get rid of it. There's all kinds of things that could happen. And for me personally, though, I didn't have a lot of money, and I started to do research about the cheapest land I could find. And I found land in Arizona, and there's land similar in New Mexico and Nevada and Wyoming, and even in Oregon and California. There's places, if you're away from the city, that are pretty lenient with building and things like that. There's really no such thing as, like restriction free. People say that all the time, but there's going to be some restrictions to just about anywhere you go. So buying this cheap land is the main thing that allowed me to save money and Now, if you can imagine, you know, mortgage and rent are some of the biggest bills you'll ever have, that and food. And as soon as you move onto your land and start to build your homestead and whatnot, you no longer have to pay rent or mortgage. And you can start growing some of your food right away and offset that cost a little bit. And before you know it, you know, right now I keep about 400 pounds of pork on the homestead all year round. And I harvest and eat more fruit and vegetables than I ever bought in my life. And so there's some security there. And I don't need to pay rent or mortgage. And this allows you to start to pay down your debts. And, you know, you don't need to, at first, you don't need to pay for anything. And still to this day, I really don't. Like, I'm not making a truck payment. I built a truck, you know, and even if I didn't, I wouldn't be buying a brand new truck. I'd buy something older and make payments on it. And, you know, you can, there's more than one way to have money. And by not spending money, that's a pretty good way to have more money. So if you're not wasting money on stuff, you'll have a little bit more liquid that you can put into things that matter, like food, water, and shelter. My channel is all about being frugal. And I know that now that I've been here over 6 years, people will look and, you know, some people will look and say, gosh, that's just a really nice cabin. And some people will say that cabin's trash, but you get the point. Is some people will be like, wow, that's really nice. And that stove isn't frugal. And well, frugal is living within your means. And so when I first started, no, this stove would have never been frugal. And this cabin wasn't even an option for me at first. But I lived in a van and saved money for years, you know, and now I can afford something like this, which is still frugal because it falls within my means. And I'm going to heat this place and cook in here. I bake, by the way, and cook all my meals almost every day. I don't buy fast food and stuff, so this will get used constantly. And then I've got an outdoor kitchen, by the way, for the summertime that I can do the same thing. And this will get a huge amount of miles. And the fact that I put one little fire in here, basically a log and some tinder the first time, and it stayed warm about 140 degrees for 6 hours off of one log. I think I'll be able to just light a fire in the morning and a fire at night, maybe just a fire in the morning, and keep the cabin quite warm most of the year, you know. And obviously I can burn a little more firewood if I have to, but that is frugal to have a super efficient stove that you don't burn a lot of wood in, and you're going to use it constantly. So I found the land using Google, and I built this cabin so affordably by buying second grade lumber. So I bought second grade land, and then I bought second grade lumber. And this is all just post and beam, and I hired an engineer to help me with it. But the wood, I probably paid about half what you would pay for premium wood. And that saved me a huge amount of money. And I did that with a lot of things, you know. I got the cheapest hardware I could that would still do the job. You know, I poured 20 concrete footings in sonotubes. I didn't use metal hardware for that. I coated the posts in tar and did different things to save money and make this quite affordable. Of course, I built the entire cabin by hand. Not having to hire somebody saved me a lot there. I hired an engineer and a third-party inspector, and then I can just go down to the county and get a occupancy permit. Check out my Everything Frugal Off-Grid kits on my website and subscribe while you're at it. So someone commented that I should hire a professional to build the fireplace, and aesthetically maybe I should have. But there's no way I could have afforded to pay somebody. It would have cost me twice as much money. And I like to do things myself, and the whole homestead, everything about it I did myself. And you save a lot of money that way. And if you're just looking at the cabin, I know it's a mess right now, but this table, that couch, the windows, these are all things that I just DIY'd, and I saved a huge amount of money doing that in every way around the homestead. So if you're looking for a complete breakdown of what it's cost me to do my entire homestead, I don't know, at this point maybe I'm in $60K for everything. The cabin was like $13K. I paid less than $2,000 for the land. I don't know that you could do that still, but if you search the whole US, you're bound to find land eventually. And I've, in fact, seen a whole lot more people now starting frugal homesteads, and that's pretty cool. I'm not 100% debt free, but I have about $6,000 in debt. And these are things that I've continually paid down over time. And so I got a hold of, by not having to pay rent and mortgage, by working for myself, and by doing a lot of things myself, I save a lot of money, and I started to generate a little bit of income and paid down debts. And then now, what I'll do is maybe I'll use a credit card for a couple $1,000s to improve the horse shelter. And then I'll just, I'll do that I'll do that work, and then I'll pay down the debt. And then once I get back on top of things, then I can do another, $2,000 project. And you can continually improve upon your homestead. And I had so many people tell me, like, the first greenhouse I built was like $200. It was just PVC pipe with plastic wrapped over it. Worked fine even in the wind and whatnot, but it would only last a couple years at a time. And I rebuilt it with harder plastic panels, and I got the cheaper ones, and I'm going to have to rebuild it one more time. But this last time I rebuild it, it's going to be really, really nice. And it's lasted for years with this plastic, and you would just have to replace the plastic every couple years with the way I had it originally. My point is I think it's better to build yourself a greenhouse and then rebuild it if you have to. So what if you have to rebuild it? As you save money, pay down debts, you'll have more income available down the road. And then you can build your lifelong greenhouse. Since you stuck around this long, I'm going to give you my free ultimate guide to off-grid living. There's a link down below.